I'm going to introduce Jill Stelfox, who's the CEO of Edgy. She's a phenomenal professional, and I've been getting to know her over the last several months. Just a wonderful person. I'm pulling up her bio right now because I want to make sure that I get it right. And she told me to be light on the accolades, so I'll do my best to cut down Jill. But Jill's the co-CEO of Edgy Inc. She's the founder of Graffiti Sports, co-board of the chair of Women in Sports Tech, and she's an advisory board member of Route Analytics. Jill's a leader in many of the initiatives that she's doing in the sports tech world. And along the way, she's been involved in many companies, founded many companies. She's raised over $50 million and returned over $1 billion to her investors. What I'll also point out about Jill is that before she started Edgy Inc. And Graffiti Sports, Jill was the vice president and general manager of location solutions at Zebra Technologies. She was the one who her division generated a lot of the data about the games, the movements in the games that now whole businesses and whole industries are utilizing her data as we move forward into sports technology in 2020. So I'm having Jill come up here to talk about some of the new innovations in sports today and what we might expect to see in 10 years. So thank you, everyone. Jill Stelfox.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to talk about some game changers, 3 things that I think we should all pay attention to now and in the future kind of going on. And I'm going to start right where you left off, IoT, the IoT of everything. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about me. So in 2013, I was at Zebra Technologies, and we had this little thing called RFID. We had a little tracking technology that allowed us to track things. We were tracking parts for every auto manufacturer in the world to the line side in seconds, multiple times a second. Well, couldn't we put that on football players and track them live in games and put speed, distance, maybe collision information? Couldn't we know that? So we called up the NFL. We called them up. I called them up in November 12th. On January 4th, we were doing a demo here in Century City, and we were on the field in July doing actually a practice game at the Rams, and we were live in preseason games in 2013. We were live on air for the first time in 2014. So now today, if you watch any NFL game and you see those little lines with speed and distance and player information, little names above players' heads, that's all RFID information that my team brought to life through the NFL using IoT and RFID. So who knew that all that time ago we would start that? So we've been tracking 25 times a second every single player movement in game from 2014 till now. We track the ref, we track the ball. We know everything. Now, do you think we know collisions? Do you think we know concussions? Interesting that these topics are still debated when we have data, right? So fascinating how far we've come from a collections perspective, and yet how far we haven't come from a data analytics perspective, right? There's more to do. My point there, more to do. Interestingly enough, that technology is available in football, rugby, soccer, some soccer, not all soccer, not baseball, basketball uses cameras. So it's available in a lot of sports, a lot of games, but not everywhere. So fast forward, in 2014, a small little company called Sport Radar did a crazy deal for $100 million for the right to use the data that we were creating from the NFL to do something with it. $100 million a year. That company today is worth $2.4 billion because they figured it out. Do you know what they figured out? Gaming. Gaming. Gaming is legal in some states. Enough states to generate income, right? So there will be so many IoT devices on players and in-game that will generate revenue that it's going to be staggering. You want to know what's coming? MLB just announced that they have a robot that they've been testing that's called the home plate robot that's going to call strikes. When? Next season. Un-American? Do we argue on our couches anymore? Like, where's that going? How are you going to argue at the television when it's called by a robot? Like, where's this go? Let me tell you, the argument about IoT and what is sacred in sports and what is not sacred in sports is going to get really blurred. So, IoT, robots, devices on players, fans are going to have even more, as Daniel talked about, in stadium and at home to view games. You'll be able to view your entire fantasy players on a headset, in a game, in virtual reality, all the time. Like, all the time. You'll be able to have your own camera focused on your favorite player all the time. Why would you watch players you don't even care about? Why would you watch 11 on 11 when you can watch your one? Like, that's where this is going. So it's becoming really individualized. It'll be really fascinating. So you've got an interesting thing about where money's coming from to fund IoT. You've got people like Don Garber, who's the commish of soccer, Major League Soccer, coming out and doing a joint fund with RGA to fund IoT and technology for soccer. That's interesting. And if Major League Soccer, who, I don't know if you know, but Major League Soccer is the fifth league behind the major four. And if they're looking at IoT, that means the big four are crushing it. So it's a big deal. Gambling is expected to account for $150 million in new revenue. They can't get it without devices to collect new data. So it starts with devices and device collection at all levels. So it's funny, I was just talking to somebody about, is the phrase IoT even a thing anymore? Or is it just IoT is everywhere now? And maybe that's where this is in 10 years. IoT is everywhere. So now let's talk about team ownership. Next big thing that's changing. If you look at the top 32 teams, 32 football clubs, soccer clubs in Europe, their enterprise value grew 8% in 2018. If you look at the European stock market in 2018, it fell 13%. So when you've got enterprise values going up and stock markets going down, who do you attract? Private equity, the money people. So now, of the 32 most popular football clubs in Europe, you have 6 US-based private equity owners owning football clubs. Do they care about soccer? Weird. So what happens when you have ownership that looks at owning a team based on financial returns versus love of the game? The cool thing for us technologists is they look at it from an efficiency technology perspective. What more things can we give to the fans? What more technology can we put into the game? So it's an opportunity for companies that are in the technology space to grow and expand. And you're going to talk to business people who understand the value of those technologies on the other side of the table. But it's also going to take the clubs that aren't doing technology and force them to run their team like a business. So here's the kind of funny thing about dealing with teams. I spent 6 years working with NFL clubs, literally inside NFL clubs. And if you look at scouting and marketing and fans and player management and coaching, those organizations don't have systems today that talk. The basic things that in corporate America we take for granted, where you've got visibility into things like financials that everyone can see, or an HR system that readily tells you what's going on with people, they don't have those same things. So that's an opportunity for technology companies to bring all of that ecosystem together. There aren't very many people focused on doing those kinds of things, but let me help you. When you've got private equity money going into these places and they look at that and go, are you kidding me? Let me tell you a little story. Do you want to know how most clubs do scouting today? So if you're some kid who's that you want to be a running back and you're out of, UCLA and you're a top pick, they're going to code you on a Post-it note in blue, because blue is top pick that year. So you're going to write your name, Joe Smith from UCLA. And they're going to stick you on a whiteboard under running back right on the board. And then the cleaning lady is going to come by and she's going to knock your name off the board. You could disappear off the board. Somebody would have to remember that you're the one. Like, this is how it's done. It's done with Post-it notes in a lot of places. So it's really crazy. So you get private equity coming in and they look at a Post-it note system and they'll go, what? Are you kidding me? And they'll change it, right? So all of this is ripe for technology and kind of cleaning up the back office. And you're going to see a lot of efficiencies coming with team ownership and team management. And then you can't really leave this week with talking about the third kind of wild, wild west place to look to for advantages in sports, which is women in sports. Come on. It's the week of women in sports. Come on now. Come on. Those women, they did an awesome job. So 2 places to focus for women's sports. One is there is a whole budding industry on gear fit for purpose in women's sports. Women in sports or women playing sports and playing at all levels in sports is growing. It actually has been big, but it's now growing in focus, both because women have more financial power to pay for things and they're demanding more equipment fit for purpose. There is a staggering studies about equipment in every industry where they are built for men, and women are required to make it work. So the major wetsuit manufacturer is a great example. In 2015, offered 50 plus wetsuits for men and 8 for women. Well, the good news is, fast forward till today, it's about on par. It's almost equal. If you look at competitive bike racing, the only company selling bike seats that are specifically designed for women in competitive racing is a great company run by a woman, started 3 years ago, to make a custom seat for women. There's a great company in San Luis Obispo who started making swimsuits custom fit for competitive girls in surfing, because there isn't surf gear for women who are trying to do that, right? So the list goes on and on and on and on. Interestingly enough, shin guards, cleats, all of these things can be fit for purpose. Now, there's a lot of things that don't have to be. So some of these companies have figured it out. Nike is one. Why do this? Nike is one. The number one selling jersey of all time for them, U.S. women's soccer jersey. Hello. It's worth it, right? So the money's there. And that I think is kind of a big deal, right? So the money's there. The second thing about this fit for purpose around women's sports, and I think it's bigger going back to IoT where I started, is IoT devices fit for purpose in women's sports. So in 2013, I did the program with the NFL, and in 2014, it was live on broadcast, and that was the first time in history that any tracking data was live on broadcast, and it was in August of 2014. And in June of 2019, this past June, it was the first time ever that tracking data was live on a women's sport during a game. And it was the Australian Rugby League game, which was awesome. And they put catapult tracking devices on women. And they tracked them during the game, and they did it just like a man's game. But think about it. If you watch the men's FIFA World Cup final, they used GPS tracking data, and you saw names above heads, speed, distance. You didn't see it in the women's, but you will. So there will be money spent on all those IoT devices, all going into women's sport. Now, all the money that was spent, which is billions of dollars, equipping the men's, it's the wild, wild west equipping the women's. So all those relationships can be built and can be done now. And so I think it's a great opportunity. It's going to take probably another 5 years before we see that, but there certainly will never be another Women's World Cup without those kind of tracking devices. But it's interesting, there was such an outcry after they did it in Australia. The whole world kind of looked at each other and went, why aren't we doing that for women? We kind of forgot. So I think it'll change. But it gives an opportunity for all of us to rise to the occasion. So the last thing I want to talk about, Daniel mentioned that I'm the co-chair of Women in Sports Technology. So Women in Sports Technology is a not-for-profit, and we bring together women and enlightened men who want to come together and give women a shot at technology-based careers in sports. And so Breadware is one of our partners there, and we're super honored that they're part of that, as well as people like Intel and others, and some amazing companies and leagues, the NBA and Nike and others. So it's a great organization. So thank you for bringing me here. Have a great day, and I look forward to meeting all of you.